dear friends, today we celebrate the feast day of Franciscan, Blessed Luchesius, who was the first Tertiary, the first member of St. Francis's Third Order. And this is certainly a wonderful day when you think about it. As you know, you may not know, but St. Francis established his order. He left the world. He was a very rich young man, very celebrated in Assisi, good old times, parties and fancy clothes and everything. He was a good person, but he did like the world and the pleasures of the world, and he loved the song and I'm sure the dance and everything else. But he felt, as we see in today's gospel, that his heart was not in the right place. His treasure, he wanted to be in heaven. So he gave up all that he had. And he was a very wealthy young man. His father was one of the wealthiest men around, certainly in Assisi, maybe in all of Italy, a very wealthy merchant. And St. Francis worked for him and had all the good things that he wanted. But he felt he wanted to serve the Lord. So he gave it all up. And eventually he had 12 followers, and he himself went to Rome to get the approval of Pope Innocent III. And at first, Innocent III was non-committal, but then he had a dream. He saw St. John's Lateran, the great basilica of the Rome, and he saw it falling down, and two men were holding it up. Later the next day, he recognized these two men as St. Francis and St. Dominic. So this was the 13th century, a century not unlike our own, a century where people were interested in wealth and pleasure and prestige and so on. And St. Francis was holding it up. He was giving the world a great lesson, the lesson of poverty, how important poverty was, to despise this world's riches, because the riches of this world can blind us and we become very avaricious. This is what Blessed Luchesius was. He also was a merchant, and he was very, very wealthy. But he felt himself getting very avaricious, and he didn't want that. And of course, St. Francis came to his town, and he was very inspired to give it all up and follow Francis. And at that time, Francis had only the first and second order. The first order with the friars minor, priests and friars, brothers, and the second order for nuns. But he established, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, the third order. Third order was for people who wanted to follow Francis, but because they were married, they could not. So they would live in the world, live the Franciscan way of life, live the life of gospel simplicity and poverty, and follow Christ, and not be concerned with this world's goods. This is so important. For where your treasure is, there is your heart. And we know from the scriptures, our Lord, blessed Lord, told us, what does it profit a man if he gain the whole world and suffer the loss of his soul? How many people today, all they think about is money, 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 prestige, popularity, and so on. Anything to make money. And as we know from St. Paul also, money is the root of all evil. How many people will lose their souls because of money? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and suffer the loss of his soul? Blessed Luchesius understood that, and he gave it all up. And his wife at first didn't understand, but she also came along with him. And they lived a very simple life as farmers. One day he gave his last loaf of bread to a peasant, and his wife was very upset because it was the last loaf of bread in the house. What are we going to eat now that you've given out our last loaf of bread? And what they did was they went to the cupboard to look, and there it was, overflowing with bread. How blessed God was with this. How blessed he was. How Luchesius had kept his faith and good life, but he had good works. We know nowadays that a lot of people think you can get to heaven just on faith. But faith without good works is nothing, St. James tells us. We have to have good works. So, living a life of poverty and charity towards their neighbor, giving of their alms to the poor and people who need help and so on. These are the good works that a third order member has to do. To live for heaven and live using the goods of this world for the good of others, not concerned with themselves, to be generous. And of course, God will always be generous. So we see this is so important for our own salvation. So we need to be charitable, my friends, to our neighbor. Charity, love of God, to love the Lord your God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. St. John tells us, how can we say we love God if we don't love our neighbor? We see our neighbor every day, and we don't love him. We don't see God. So we have to practice love of God through our neighbor, and we have to be kind to our neighbor. So you can't say you love God and then you hate your neighbor. You have to love your neighbor. As the Lord said, do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who persecute and calumniate you, as we saw in today's first reading. You will be despised by the world, and the world will hate you because you will be a reproach to them. By your goodness, you will reproach them, and you will make them feel bad. So in order for them not to feel bad, they have to ridicule you, make you look bad. That's the old ad hominem argument, where you fight somebody by calling him names, and you call him a fool. And St. Francis tells us we're fools for Christ's sake. St. Paul tells us the same. So we all have to be fools for Christ. And if the world hates us, just remember it has despised Jesus. If they have treated Jesus, so will they treat you. So we need to live for this next world, not for this world. And Blessed Lucchesio and his wife and so many others, so many other great men and women followed St. Francis into the Third Order. King St. Louis of France, Queen Elizabeth of Hungary, and so many other of the royalty throughout Europe, especially in the 13th century. This is why William Thomas Walsh, a great historian, wrote a great book, The 13th, the Greatest of Centuries. All right? So it's something that you might want to take a look at. Why is the 13th century the greatest of centuries? Well, because it was influenced by the love of God, by St. Francis, by St. Dominic, St. Louis, Queen Elizabeth, and so many others. And if you are ever in New York City, my dear friends, go to see St. Patrick's Cathedral and the other beautiful churches in New York City, beautiful churches that were built in the turn of the century, and go to St. Francis of Assisi Church on West 31st Street. And as you go into church, you'll see a great mural above the altar with all the Franciscan saints and blesseds, numerous of them, 200 or 300 of the saints, all pictured there. St. Francis, St. Anthony, St. Bonaventure, John Capistran, and so on. Won't have St. Michael, won't have St. Maximilian Kolbe, nor Padre Pio, because they were saints after this mural was built. But it's a beautiful mural, and it tells the story of the Franciscans. So many great saints following St. Francis in poverty, living not for this world, denying themselves, giving up everything, so for the eternal life. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world? And that's what we want to do. We want to gain the next world, where our heart, our treasure should be in heaven. So let us pray the Holy Rosary for all those people today who, like Luchesio, were avaricious at one time. Pray for sinners, because we want to make sinners who are maybe our enemies, we want to make them our friends. So many great saints and blesseds were at one time enemies of the church, all right, outside the church. And Eventually, through prayer, they came into the church and lived holy lives. So we pray our Holy Rosary, as Our Lady has asked, pray and sacrifice, for many souls will go to hell because no one prays and sacrifices for them. Don't let that be said about you. Pray and sacrifice for souls, and you will see that many souls will be saved because of your sacrifices and your prayers. May the Lord bless you.